How's it going, everyone? I hope all is well. I wanted to make a video about base layers and mid layers. I'm putting these two into one video for brevity, and I also think environmental factors decide both what kind of base layer you're going to be using and your mid layer, and depending on what base layer you pick, it may determine what mid layer you're going to pick. When you throw in what outer shell you have handy or you plan to use and what the environment's doing, your outer shell dictates some things as well, but I'm going to try to keep it as simple as I can, and I think building your system from the bottom up is kind of a good idea. So there's 4 different scenarios that I kind of like to group things into. It's hot and humid, cold and humid, hot and dry, and cold and dry. Now generally, if it's humid, I'm not wearing merino wool, period. That's just me personally. A lot of people like it. It doesn't stink as much apparently, but I'm really out there for the performance. I think if you're hunting, I don't know how much merino wool is really cutting down on your scent when it comes down to it. When you're hunting whitetail, which is the majority of what I do, they're going to wind you no matter what. So, especially in an archery scenario. So I'll start by going with hot and humid. What base layer am I going to be wearing? And I also cut grass. That's my main job. I have a lawn service, and this is the shirt that I'm wearing. It is made by Patagonia. I'm not a huge fan of that company's politics, but the performance of their gear is pretty high. It's high quality stuff for the most part. So this is called I think it's called the Capilene. Yeah, here we go. Capilene Cool Lightweight. It says fast drying on there. It is extremely fast drying. This is the most breathable garment of clothing that I own. You can practically see through it. So if it's hot and humid, this is what I'm wearing, guaranteed. They make a just straight up Capilene Cool shirt. There's a big difference between the Capilene Cool and the lightweight version if you're shopping for these. They are extremely expensive. I think I almost paid $65 just for this long sleeve crew tee. I think they have a hoodie as well, maybe. I'm not sure if they have that in the lightweight version. But anyway, if it's hot and humid, I'm wearing that. If I'm hunting and it's hot and humid, I'm wearing the Sitka. This is the Core Lightweight hoodie. I wear this a lot in like say 80 degrees humid environments, or 70, something like that. It's nice to have camo as a base layer that if it's really hot, you can strip down to your base layer and you still have camo. Some maybe like late turkey season, something like that. If it's like 70s, say, or I'm not putting out a lot of output, like not backpacking. I don't know that I would wear this in a real backpacking sense, but this is merino, and say it is hot and humid, but I'm not expending a lot of energy. I would go with this. This is a Kuiu. This is a merino blend. They call it New Yarn. I think it's nylon and merino wool. I went on a 2-week archery antelope hunt last fall in Montana. It got up to 80s, low 80s, and it was pretty dry. That was where it was okay to go with merino. So yeah, let's talk about dry situations. So if we're talking about dry situations, I'm okay with wearing merino, especially if it's cold and dry and I'm not backpacking. But this is kind of a rare scenario. If I'm just in the house, I'm in my garage here. I do a lot of work in here. It's not heated in here, so aside from like a little electric heater I have running sometimes, so it's usually 50s at the warmest on like a very cold winter day. And I'm almost always wearing something like this. This is made by Outdoor Research. This is a merino wool polyester blend. This is the Crew tee, and this is a zip tee or a quarter zip. I got two of them because I love them so much. They just really do a great job keeping me warm. If I throw that on in a fleece, it, you know, I'm warm. If I go outside, I put on a wind layer, and I could do everything I need to do on a 20-degree day, running errands or whatever. If I've worn merino once. I've worn actually this exact shirt backpacking a couple weeks ago, and it was a little bit warmer than expected. But even still, I was very uncomfortable in terms of moisture wicking and moving moisture through your garments. Merino does not perform the way that some polyester knits will. So, yeah. Let me go back to my hot and humid and cold and humid. Yeah, so hot and humid, I'm wearing just this base layer. If it's cold and humid, I want multiple polyester layers. So I'm going to wear this as my very first base layer. And then on top of that, I'm going to wear this Capilene midweight base layer for cool to cold is what it says on here. So I don't go to a heavyweight mid layer because I really want to be able to move moisture from my skin and have that evaporate off my body so I don't get cold. What you want is a system that breathes well, that as soon as you start to sweat, this system moves that sweat to the outermost layer, and your body heat is able to get that moisture to evaporate and leave your system. If that system doesn't breathe well and the moisture evaporates off your skin and stays trapped in your clothing, and then you say sit back down, or you have to sit down, that moisture is going to stay trapped in that system. It's going to condense back onto your clothing, and then you're going to have damp clothes. And if it's really cold and windy, you could be in trouble. So I don't take any chances. I don't mess with, personally, I mean, plenty of people do, and they're fine. But if you want to be comfortable, if you want to have a good time when you're backpacking, if you're, especially if you're, doing a difficult hunt or a difficult backpacking trip to begin with, I don't want to take any chances. I want to be as comfortable as possible. So yeah, if it's cold and humid, Capilene Cool Lightweight underneath a Capilene Midweight base layer, all polyester. If it's cold and dry, I'm still going to opt for polyester, because if I'm, say, going up over mountains, as we call them in PA, I'm not talking about the Rocky Mountains, but, all day long you could be going up and over mountains, tracking a deer, what have you. Even if it is cold and dry outside, which in the first place isn't too common, you could easily sweat up. So I still want polyester even if it's cold and dry. So hot and humid, cold and humid, and cold and dry, I'm going with polyester. Hot and dry, or warm and dry, I'll go with a thin layer of merino wool, something like this. Or if it's a non-performance environment, which is one where you're not exerting yourself a lot and you just want to be warm, a thick merino base layer, I don't see a problem with that. But for performance, I want polyester. Okay, so let's talk about mid layers a little bit. So, and let's just talk about the performance scenario, because, this is what I'm wearing 90% of the time that I'm hunting or backpacking anyhow. So I have my base layers on, and maybe, if it is a little bit warm, or if I do get warm, I can take off this midweight base layer. Next, what I'm going to have on, as long as it's cold enough for it, is a grid fleece. And this one is the Patagonia R1 grid fleece. I really love this thing. It is pretty expensive, that's for sure. Outdoor Research sells a grid fleece, and I would be tempted to say that they perform similarly. I got my mom one for her birthday last year, and she really loves it for running and outdoor activities. And that's really what the grid fleece is good for. It gives you an extra layer of protection from the cold. But if you're in doing a high-paced activity, or if you're backpacking and it's pretty cold outside, and you're not warm enough with just your base layers on, then this is really great for that. If you take this and throw on a wind-resistant layer, you have a lot of protection there. So what I really love about grid fleece, and just my experience with this piece in general, is that I don't need to take it off as much as other thicker mid layers. When you go from low activity, low exercise to higher activity and then back down, I don't have to be taking this off on and off so much. And that's where you save yourself a little bit of time and hassle with a grid fleece. It is extremely breathable. You can see through it. At least it might be tough for you guys, but I can see light through it. It is breathable, but it has these squares on it that do trap heat. This fabric here is Polar Tech, which has been around for a long time and is really great stuff. This won't keep you warm if it's 10 degrees outside and say 10 mile per hour winds. You will need, in my experience, you'll need more than just this and a puffy to keep you warm in that environment. And that's where a larger, and if you're just sitting around, excuse me if I mentioned that already. And that in my experience, what I want then is another fleece on top of that, which might sound crazy, but what's nice about something like this, kind of a big puffy fleece this is made by Mountain Gear or something like that, which is a mountaineering company. Here's their logo. I don't know if they're around anymore, but Mountain Hardware, yeah. Many of you have heard of them, most likely. But there's a lot of fleeces like this out there. I'm sure you could go to Community Aid, so what we have around here, or like Salvation Army, and pick up one of these used for $10. It's just a polyester fleece, and if it's really freezing cold out there, I want an oversized fleece layer on top of me, and then my outer soft shell, or just straight to puffies, 1 or 2 puffies if it's freezing 10 degrees and breezy and I'm trying to sit. So that's a system that I've learned and only recently employed, and I'm going to continue to use that, and I'm just a big fan of that system. So that's that. When it comes to bottoms, I pretty much always, if I do need to wear like a base layer, I have a same thing as this shirt. I just don't have it on the table here, but it's a Patagonia Capilene midweight base layer. And all these Capilene midweight layers have a diamond stitching that it like traps little air pockets against your body for added insulation. So that's really cool. And I have the same thing for pants. So that's what I wear for my base layer for pants, for mid layers. This was given to me. It's really cool. This is, again, Patagonia, and like I said, I'm not a fan of their politics, but these are quite old, and they were given to me from a friend, and these are actually made in the U.S. So for a time, Patagonia was made in the U.S., and it's not anymore. I'm a huge fan of stuff that's been made here. And these are the same thing. These are a side zip, but these have suspenders on them. These are made by Polar Tech, and it's just a fleece mid layer. For me personally, when it comes to bottoms, I very infrequently wear mid layer. What I end up doing, and what is a lot more convenient, is to have a base layer on, a wind and rain resistant shell on, and then if I get very cold, what I'll do is I'll put on my puffy pants on top of that. I have Kafaru Lost Park pants that I'll throw on top. It's just so much easier to throw on puffy pants than to have to take off my outer shell, put on fleece pants, or take them off, and then put on my outer shell again. That's a hassle, especially when you're hunting or something and you're trying to not make a lot of noise. So what it comes down to for me, in a performance environment, this is what I'm wearing. If it's really cold, and I really need to stay warm, and I don't have the luxury of going into a house or going into camp or something like that and warming up, and I really don't want to take any risks, this is what I'm wearing. I'm wearing an extremely breathable but not very insulative base layer, and for you this could be like some high quality Under Armour, or maybe even like a Sitka lightweight layer or something along those lines. Then I'm wearing a warm midweight polyester layer, base layer. Then I'm wearing grid fleece on top of that, and then a heavier fleece for added insulation if it's almost dangerously cold. And then on my bottoms, I'm wearing Capilene, mid-weight base layer, and then fleece on top of that if it's really cold. When it comes to tops, there's a lot of options out there. I'm probably going to do another video on that. You could have soft shell on, just wind resistant layer, or you could have a water resistant layer. You can have puffies. I have a couple puffies that I might wear depending. So that's it. I hope this was in some way useful to you. If you're someone that's new to backpacking, you've never been stuck out in the cold or the extreme damp. I've spent many days where I was a little bit too cold, coming back to a sleeping bag that was not quite warm enough, and then going back out and not being quite warm enough to mess around with anything that doesn't work well for me. So this is the system that works well for me. So thanks guys for watching. Have a great one.